Heyo, welcome to episode 7 of the My Music Show, where I interview various people from around the music industry, whether they are artists, musicians, producers, engineers, business owners, or any combination of those things. Today I have a very special guest who is called Bjorgvin Benediktsson, and he is the founder and owner of Audio Issues. He's a musician, he's a producer, he's an engineer, he's a writer, he's a published author, he's so many amazing things, and I'm super excited to share our chat together. We go deep into what it takes to run your own business, creating content consistently, finding a good target market, as well as his experience of being an authority on teaching mixing online, being an audio engineer, musician, all of that great stuff. But before we dive in, I want to mention that if you're interested in learning more about developing your own creative workflow, creative system that really tailors to your strengths as an artist and a musician, I invite you to check out my masterclass called How to Master the 3 Secrets of the Creative Process, where I go deep into sharing actionable insights that I've learned on my 10+ year journey being a musician, a producer, an engineer, in helping you develop a creative process that works for you so you can continue to discover your unique sound and an approach that helps you get professional sounding music. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can find it in the link below. And with that said, let's jump into the episode. All right, welcome to episode 7 of the My Music Show, and I am super excited for the guest I have in my presence today. I have the awesome Bjorgvin, who is a musician, an audio engineer, mixing engineer, author, runs multiple businesses, including Audio Issues. Check it out. He's a coach. He's a father, all around amazing human being, probably smarter than most of us. You know a lot of languages. I know that. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Amazing. So the one thing that's going to be difficult in this conversation is going to be to put a cap over the value that you can provide to musicians in this modern day and age, because you do so many things so well that could apply to somebody kind of growing into the music industry, whether they want to run a business, learn how to write emails, perfect their craft of mixing, understand mixing, all of these things. So that's going to be the kind of challenge that we face together, is to actually try to get most of it in there in this conversation. So
I'll try my best to be concise and talk. I can talk very fast.
Great. Awesome. I'm not, I have confidence for sure. So just to start things off, like, what are you up to? What's up in your world right now?
Lots of things. We just came out with our first ever software plugin, the Audio Issues EQ, which translates a confusing frequency jargon, or that tells you where that jargon is. So like muddiness, boominess, harshness, and present, and that's the negative side. And then the positive side of like attitude and thickness and weight and stuff like that. We put that all together in sort of an instructional EQ for home studio musicians, bedroom producers that want to better understand equalization in general and master the frequency spectrum. We put that software together with my ultimate guide to EQ and my Audio Issues EQ course, which you had quite a hand in helping me out with. So grateful for your video work. It's been awesome to get you on board.
It was fun. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, that's an incredible, if ever you've been intimidated by mixing, or if you want to get your lightsaber, because I agree that the EQ is by far the most important tool in any mix. Definitely check out that plugin. It comes with some videos with myself and so many more resources for you to get your head around that. And to be honest, like, if you understand EQ properly, you can get mixes like so far just by that. So definitely check that out. So yeah, that's really interesting. You've been teaching through Audio Issues, like everything, like mixing, recording, gear, mindset stuff. Like, you've covered probably every subject under the sun when it comes to audio. So what moved you towards creating a plugin?
It was just an opportunity that presented itself with a partner, and if we want to get a little meta mind juju voodoo mindset magic here, it actually just, I manifested it, to be fair. I like literally just thought that I wanted this, and then it just walked into my life and offered the opportunity to me, and I took it. I had had the idea for the EQ long before I ever got the opportunity to pursue it as a real tool or as a real product. So putting down your goals, thinking of the reality that you want to live in is maybe a little, juju for people, but I can't say that it didn't work.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even on that note, like the way I kind of see it is there's still some magic to it for
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
it's like when you like intentionally think of something or it's in the back of your head, then your subconscious mind's like processing all that stuff. And then you're more keen to noticing the opportunity that comes, right? And like who knows if that also informs the reality, but it's really cool. So one thing I want to touch on is I feel like your EQ is not only an EQ, but it's an educational tool within itself. And
yeah,
that's a concept that I've seen come up a ton with like modern music making equipment, is that the software or the hardware itself also has like a process within it to help you learn and understand,
yeah.
or like learn some kind of aspect of what you're doing. And like, have you ever did you think of that intentionally when you're making that EQ plugin or
Well,
notice that?
yeah, because I'm first and foremost a teacher, and I've been teaching about audio stuff for a very long time, 12 years now, I think. And so it was always, and there's a ton of EQs out there. Like you have to be a little unique. There's lots of great EQs. I'm not saying that mine is the only one you should have or try. However, it might be the final one you'll buy because it'll help you. It helps you understand EQ, helps you know exactly what you're doing when you're EQing. But it's the combination of like wanting to teach, making something that's instructive and educational and helpful, while and that sort of guides you and helps you make something that you're proud of, because ultimately it's a tool to make your music sound the best it can. So I wanted to make sure that that was as easy as possible for you. So like, tagline wise, it makes the EQing effortless and easy, and you can focus on just making your stuff sound as good as possible.
Totally. Yeah. And one cool thing about that EQ is that it helps you vocalize or like verbalize sonic concepts into words, right? Which is, we communicate with words, we don't communicate with numbers usually. And
Right.
being able
Well, I
to,
mean, you do. I mean, at a certain level. So, and that's why, like, my audience is home studio musicians, bedroom producers, aspiring audio engineers, perhaps, but not necessarily those that are established, that can like speak that frequency language, like fluently. Like I can, and you can. Like, I could walk into the studio and be like, yeah, I need a little less 200 hertz on that, add a bit of 3K to the snare, blah 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 blah, right? But that's not really how the musician who is maybe insecure about the audio technology talks. They speak in colors and words and imagery, and I try to sort of connect the dots there for them.
totally. Yeah. And like, even with that though, like if you're pinpointing a specific frequency, right? And if you ask, oh, why, right? If I ask you why 200 hertz, then you're going to get into, oh, it's muddy, or it's something, right? So, and then,
Yeah,
but
totally.
it's useful to, I had another guest, Adam Clark, who's a producer and he lives in kind of the New York area. And
Yeah,
he said musicians being able to actually express themselves in a way that an audio engineer can understand
right.
is so important, so that there's like room for collaboration, right? Because if, let's say I'm in a studio with you and I'm thinking muddy, but I don't know the word for muddy or any concept around it, then it's going to be super hard for me to communicate that to you, versus if we have like a common language,
Right.
which that EQ kind of helps you solidify. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And it's like that you hit the nail on the head there. It's like about language and understanding and being able to speak the same language. And that's important to me, just, English being my second language. Me growing up in Iceland, nobody speaks Icelandic. so and neither should they. It's quite the time investment and not a lot of return on effort. But obviously I need to speak other people's languages if I want to be understood. So having lived in the US for a while, and obviously I'm fairly fluent in English, and then I lived in Spain for a while. I went to audio engineering school in Spain actually, and I spoke limited Spanish, but when you throw yourself into the deep end and you completely immerse yourself, like at some point there's going to be a switch that goes off in your brain that just like, you've leveled up your experience points in language so that now you can speak Spanish. So, and that's super important. And so I guess that sort of ties a lot of my sort of need to be understood, not necessarily me to be understood, but more that like I think it's important that everybody understand each other. And when you put an audio engineer and a musician in a room, they have shared vocabulary, but it's better if they are more fluent in their understanding, I guess.
100%. Yeah, there's a lot there actually. I've always seen a huge connection between music as a language and language, like how we speak. Like if you almost, you let your imagination go and you think about rhythms and musical phrases, musical punctuation, expressiveness,
chords,
chords, or even like a talk box where it sounds like a voice. Like there's so many metaphors that connect the two. And yeah, like I find it very fascinating because like almost that's the core of being able to share anything, right? Like musicians and artists, we're trying to share experience with somebody through sound and it's the same thing with language, right? We're trying to communicate something that we're trying to express. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are with that, since you have such aptitude with, like, you've written so many books. I don't know how many emails you've sent in your life. Like, you have mastery over the written language. And I just wanted to pick your brain on that.
Well, so I mean, like, so first of all, like, music is just a vehicle for emotion in my mind, and the way you convey that emotion, that's the way you approach the music, the way you produce the music, the chords you pick, the lyrics that you write, and all that is supposed to, tell a story, convey an emotion, in some way, right? So you and that comes down to your choices. Like, if you want to make a sad song, it's probably better to have it in a minor key, right? And if you want things that are a little bit more upbeat, you want to have it in a major key. And like, it's funny how, like, I see often, I don't comment or engage a lot on social media, but I'm in a ton of audio and musician groups, and I like get, not only just the dialogue between people, but also, like, I scroll feeds of other businesses, other brands and stuff like that. And it's just crazy to me, like, musicians that just use the piano roll without any understanding of the musical theory behind it. You don't need a lot of theory to be able to be, like, very adept at conveying emotion, conveying the right the right emotions that you want to put in your song, instead of just like DJ dead mousing it, of just like trying to draw something, which is funny. I watched his masterclass and I thought it was fascinating how he, like, didn't really play chords, he just drew stuff. And I just think that there's a advantage to people that just, you take one music theory class and you learn, like, the home chords of a key and stuff like that. I don't know if home chords is the right way to say that in English, but that's what we call them in Icelandic. But so yeah, it's just the language and being able to understand the mechanics of language. For example, a few years ago, I took a lot of comedy classes. And so I did stand-up comedy, I did sketch writing, I did improv, and it was really amazing to learn the mechanics, the underlying mechanics of, like, why things are funny, how to construct a joke, all the tools and tricks of that particular trade, because you can immediately use that in your email writing, in your lyric writing, in your even just, being witty at the bar. So, like, understanding that it's not all just creativity, it's not all just inspiration and, like, you'll sit down and just like you just happen to become good at your craft. You have to learn the tools of the trade. You have to learn the mechanics of why things work the way they work. And if you understand that, you are understanding the fabric of creativity, and then you can actually decide to convey an emotion, tell a story, and you use those quote unquote limitations, frameworks, mechanics, whatever you want to call it, to get there faster. And so that's, and language is just one of those things. If I often say it when I teach business, when I lecture on entrepreneurship, and especially on like writing and customer discovery, copywriting, and those sorts of things, I often say, hvernig veistu hvað ég að segja? Which basically means, if we're not speaking the same language, how do you know what I'm saying? Right? So like, you have to be able to convey what you're communicating in such a way that the other person understands it, whether that other person is the engineer you're working with, the musician you're collaborating with, the customer you're trying to help, the client you're trying to attract, things of that nature. It's all about your messaging.
100%. Yeah, the art of communication seems to be a central theme, and like learning that. And there's a couple things there. Like, one was the music theory, but one thing that you said that's so powerful is like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like storytelling devices, like the mechanics of language. But if you look at any show, like, it follows a certain kind of format where there's a cliffhanger, there's a climax, there's like tension between characters, or the hero's journey, right? That kind of stuff. And that's something I teach to a lot of my students, is to envision like musical parts as part of a musical hero's journey, right? To tell a story. And it kind of goes into like, again, like learning just simple things. It's nothing crazy, can really just take your songwriting to a whole other level, because it's like, there's something like primal about humans that connect to that type of storytelling, like a dynamics, like the contrast of like, oh, who's going to win? Like, what's going to happen? There's this, we can't resist that kind of stuff. And that's super important. And then to go back to the music theory thing, like I was taught by ear, like I just learned everything myself, and then came into learning music theory afterwards. And I gotta say that like learning the language definitely helps clarify what you already do, like what you found to work for yourself. You understand what it is. You understand other things. You can experiment and like expand to new ideas you would have never thought or come up with on your own. But there's this weird kind of stigma with music that I feel doesn't happen with normal language. So in normal language, for example, and Victor Wooten talks about this a lot, bassist, where it's like you take, when a kid starts learning how to speak, you just throw them in the environment and you let them figure it out. Like it's not if they're right or wrong, and they're going to pick up words and phrases as they go along. And there isn't really pressure. But in music, there's this like unsaid pressure of like, you have to learn all of this stuff to be able to be understood, versus like just getting thrown in and starting to learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, and I understand what you mean, but I think so. Well, I mean, like when you're, and I have firsthand experience with this, because my daughter is just babbling right now. We have no idea what she's saying, and that's fine. She'll figure it out eventually, right?
Right.
But the thing is that when it comes to the musical stuff, I guess I agree that there's some pressure, but I don't think there's necessarily pressure to become like a jazz virtuoso level musician. But like, you should know why, C and G go together, right? You should understand sort of like the limited amount of scales. Like, if you wanted to be a good musician, you just really need to know the basics. I mean, I don't want to be like, because somebody's going to take this out of context and be like he said you only needed to do this. It was like, no, this is like maybe the starting point to like getting better, right? But like, you just need to know what chords go together, and like what chords are in what scale. A handful of scales would be great. And just so that you understand that instead of like constantly asking, why does this sound like this, you just know why those work, and then put your creativity into it and make something. because and make something that, or copy something, start copying in order to get better, and then you eventually become original. Like make, it's probably why a lot of people make covers. They don't, when they make covers, they try to make their own versions of the covers, and and those covers have some originality in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's a pre-established song, maybe a pop or a hit, but their flavoring of the song from their musical chops is what makes it unique. And like you talked about story, the hero's journey, which is like the Joseph Campbell typical story of the, Star Wars, all that sort of stuff. We don't necessarily need to go into a primer what the hero's journey are. People should just look that up. But there's only really 7 basic plots in stories in general, and then there is a book that reader or listeners might want to check out called 7 Basic Plots, right? And it's like all these, like, throughout history, throughout like eons, millennia, whatever, right? It's all the same sort of thing. Hero's journey is one of them, like the monster is one of them, the Odyssey is one of them. Sort of like these are the archetype, the frameworks of story. And if you're a writer and you want to create a story, you could just pick a plot that you wanted to like lay out and have a framework around, and then you put your originality into it, because it's impossible for you not to become original if you just put your stuff down. Like, even if you wanted to do, like, I want to make a hero's journey story that's similar to Star Wars. We'll set it instead of in a galaxy far, far away, we'll put it on Earth, but it's a futuristic Earth. Like, then you have a completely new environment. You can follow the same basic structure of the story, the same basic like character archetypes and those sorts of things, but it will be impossible for you not to be original in some way. It might be, depending on how good you are, it might not be good, but it still is going to be yours.
Yeah, it's like, how many ways can a story be told, or how many perspectives can one story have, right? It's such a useful creative tool, right? I feel like if you think of making music or that way, or even a mix, like even if you're mixing and you're thinking of the journey of the song, it's a useful constraint to help you get creative. And it's funny, there's a huge parallel between like me when I was growing up listening to music. There's a bunch of things I just loved. And when I started learning about music theory, I was like, oh, that thing that I love, it's called this. It's a ninth chord, or it's the 9 on top of a minor chord, something like that, right? And then you start to get this language again to be like, the low end of the mix is muddy. And you start to be able to relate with it whole other level. So that's a pretty interesting parallel there. I wanted to switch over a little bit to, you mentioned a little bit of your backstory from starting in Iceland and all this stuff. And fun fact, I think there's a huge community of Icelandic folk north of Winnipeg in Gimli. So that's a fun little fact. Yeah, they have like a Viking festival. It's pretty
dope. Yeah. So like Gimli and like Manitoba, right? And like that area is, I think, the largest settlement of Icelanders outside of Iceland.
Unreal.
I think I'm correct in saying that we refer to them as West Icelanders, because there was not an exodus in a way in that sort of sense, but like there was a mass emigration at some point. Can't remember exactly when. I'm a little rusty on my 1800s Icelandic history, but yeah, there's a lot of Icelanders there. But yeah, no, originally I'm from Iceland, of course. Born and raised, more or less. I've been playing music since I was 8 in some way. I started guitar when started playing classical guitar when my fingers were, or my hands were simply not big enough to even be able to like fret or hold that big sort of C style neck of a guitar. So that didn't last very long, but I did take some electric guitar lessons at a very young age, which was cool. And then I switched over to piano pretty quickly because it was easier, and I had a tutor that I learned a few. I think I only got to like level 1 piano, if that is still a thing. And I just learned how to read music, and I learned how to read sheet music and all the classical, play classical stuff and things like that. And it's like funny, I learned to play piano the exact opposite of how I would teach somebody to play piano today. Like I would never. The reason I can't really play piano today is because I could only play piano if somebody put something in front of me that I could read and wasn't too challenging, which is a terrible thing for your creative juices, because if you can't at least do some improvisation or understand some of how chords go together and why things work the way they work, you're sort of limited, castrated even by that aspect. Today, if I were to teach my daughter piano, I would be like, well, what songs do you like? Let's find out what the chords are. Let me teach you how chords work. Let's learn to play something that you enjoy playing, that you can. I would teach piano as if they were to become a songwriter.
Totally.
Because I think that there's more creativity there if you become self-sufficient in being able to play, because then you start exploring on your own. But if you're constantly limited by this sheet music, then you're stuck. You're in this box. And limitations are great for creativity in general, but sometimes the box is too small, or you don't have enough information. The fog of war is too great. So anyway, took piano for a few years, switched back over to guitar. I was in like some weird junior high school bands, or not really, I wouldn't really call them bands. I was maybe like, I played a little bit of guitar with a few people. But then when I went to high school, I joined a band, and I was in that band for 5 years. We released an EP, an album. I played it was like alternative metal, I guess you could call it.
Nice.
I played lead guitar, it was like early 2000s, so heavily influenced by Deftones, Perfect Circle, Dredge.
Interesting. Yeah.
Tool, Nine Inch Nails, those sorts of bands. And so we played all over the capital area. A few, I don't really remember, a few gigs outside of the capital area. And then we toured Greenland for a weekend. And I say we toured Greenland for a weekend because there's not many places to play, but we were offered to play a music festival in Greenland. So we went there for a week and played a few shows. That was really fun, really awesome. And then I think at that point I had started working at a youth center, and that youth center had a bunch of teenagers, and some of them wanted to be in a band. So I taught them how to be in a band, how to play together, how to, somebody was the drummer and all that sort of stuff. And I helped them with that. And then I was asked to attend a workshop in live sound in another youth center in town, which was a old converted library building that was then a youth center, sort of not by day, but it was a youth center more or less, but offices on the top floor. But the main part of the building was basically like a kind of a coffee shop, a bunch of couches to hang out, play video games. Like Guitar Hero had just come out. Everybody's playing Guitar Hero, and then there was a big stage. So when the youths, if you will, weren't like hanging out, drinking coffee, reading, hanging out and chilling, playing pool, playing video games, there were shows. And so I previously to that, I had played that venue with my band quite a few times, actually. I actually have scars to prove it, because one show I actually fell off the stage, hit my head on the pool table, and my guitar went straight into the top of my my eyebrow and gashed my face open. I still have a scar on my eyebrow. It's not huge anymore, but and then, you know, I went on stage and finished. It was the last song, so we were really like heavy slamming like on stage. So I went up and finished the song, and then friends of mine came up all the way to the front of the stage and like pointed at me like furiously, like frantically pointing at my face, and I'm like, what's going on? And I touched my face, and it's just blood.
Oh my God.
Just like my face was just like,
you're just taken over by adrenaline. Like,
yeah,
what's wrong?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like, as far as rock and roll goes, it was it was pretty good. And so, you know, we finished the song. I went off stage, you know, like threw down the guitar and like, you know, made a big act out of it, and then went in and, you know, just got patched up. I didn't go to the emergency room or whatever. We just sort of like, you know, got the blood from stopping. We stopped the blood, and everything was fine after that. But it makes for a fun story. But then I took over as a live sound engineer for that venue afterwards. Or, you know, I did that workshop and was asked to run the occasional show. And then after that, I became the full-time engineer there. So I was running every show, and then I was also teaching what I was learning. I was like teaching as I was learning, which has always been what I've done from a very early age. So at another school, I was teaching junior high school kids how to record, how like a little bit about recording and, you know, audio engineering in general, because I knew enough for the powers that be at that school to create a like an elective class for them to take, like an extracurricular class. So I had a handful of people in that. Actually, one of my students is like a big pop star back home now, but he was just 14 at the time, which is kind of funny. His name is Bjorgvin. Or either is what's his name? Yeah, I can't remember the artist name exactly off the top of my head, but he's pretty cool. And so yeah, I did that sort of concurrently. I worked like 140% job at like the youth centers and schools around town. So always 1 foot in education, 1 foot in music in a way. And then I went to my bosses at the time actually encouraged me to go to audio school and pursue the craft as a full-time thing. So I, you know, looked into schools. I looked into Full Sail. There was like a few schools in the UK. There was you know, SAE Institute, which is the school I ended up going to, has campuses all over the world. And I ended up going to Spain. So I went to Madrid for 2 reasons. One was that it was cheapest. It was one of the cheaper campuses, which, you know, this was at the height of the economic crash of 2008. So wow. I needed to make some smart financial decisions. And then, so I went there, but also because I wanted to learn the language. I wanted to learn Spanish in high school myself. I had taken in Icelandic high school, you can sort of, it's a sort of a blend of how the last 2 years of high school here, first 2 years of university here.
Oh, cool. Interesting.
Or in the US. I don't know exactly how it is in Canada, but I assume it's similar. So you can take paths in a way. You can take the natural sciences route and, you know, specialize in, you know, taking physics or math or whatever. You can take the social sciences route, which is, you know, gives you more class. You have to take more classes in psychology, sociology, those sorts of things. And I took languages. So I was learning English until they didn't have classes in English anymore, like 800 level English. I took French, German, Danish, and Spanish. And Spanish was my favorite outside of English. And so because I'd taken a few Spanish classes in high school, I kind of wanted to see if I could, you know, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or as in Iceland, we say, kill two flies with 1 swat.
That's hilarious.
And so I went to Spain for those 2 reasons. It was cheaper, and I wanted to learn Spanish, and I thought it would be a great opportunity, and it wasn't like too far. And so that's how I ended up in audio school, SA Institute in Madrid, Spain. And actually 10 years later, I went and did a quick guest lecture about audio blogging and sort of online presence and things like that. They brought me back. I was in Spain, so they invited me to come speak, which was awesome to be able to come back and pay that forward. So pretty cool. From there, man, this story's getting long.
Damn.
But I was always, yeah. So at SA Institute, basically, I was learning, and then I was blogging and writing down what I was learning. So I was a freelance writer, writing for audio blogs, and then I had my own audio blog too. And so, like I said, always one step in education, one step in music or audio in this case, and always, because I think this is just true, the best way to learn something is to know it so well you can teach it to other people. So being able to always, put down what I was learning and pay that forward has basically, that's how Audio Issues was created. So Audio Issues was basically came out of me writing about what I was learning, and then I never stopped writing. I just changed some subjects and things like that. I predominantly talked about like live sound a lot first, because that's where I had been. I actually worked as a live sound engineer for a sound reinforcement company in Iceland. At the same time, I worked for that old library venue. So a lot of my early articles were about live sound, and then it changed into whatever I was learning about, and it still does to this day. Now I speak a lot about success mindset and habits and entrepreneurship, marketing, online, things of that nature. So I met a girl in Spain the year I was there, and fell in love, and we moved, and she was backpacking around Europe, and at one point she moved in with me in Spain, and then she moved to Tucson to go to law school. And once I finished my studies at the SA Institute, I followed her to Tucson, and we're still here. We have a baby and a house, and we're the quintessential atomic family, I guess, with some foreign quirks sprinkled throughout. And since I moved to the US, I actually went to the US and went to college here, because it's the easiest way to be in this country legally and following all the immigration rules and things of that nature. So I went to the Eller College of Management at the University of Arizona here in Tucson. I got a degree in business economics and entrepreneurship on top of my audio engineering diploma, and kept writing about audio and stuff like that. Had some internships at studios here in town, and kept writing, kept blogging about audio. And I went through the entrepreneurship program at the McGuire Center for Entrepreneurship. It's sort of a capstone program of the U of A, and or like a big major. So you have to double major in entrepreneurship if you want to go through the program. And it's a year-long program that teaches students how to go from idea to launch ready, basically, like from no clue to being able to confidently go on Shark Tank and pitch your idea. That's what you learn. Yeah. So I went through that program, and we launched a startup through that program, which was called Crowd Audio back in 2013, which now we closed it after a couple of years. We just wanted to go our separate ways and things like that. But it was a fun idea. It was basically like the 99 designs of audio mixing. Basically, the musician put up a song to mix, and then engineers would compete for the prize money, and the best mix won, or the mix that the musician likes the most would win. And then we had sort of a training ground with like for the audio engineers to learn their craft better. Me and I actually hired Mike Senior, who is he does, what is it called? Secrets Home. What's the book called? It's somewhere around here. Oh, it's right there. It's called Mixing Secrets from the Home Studio and then the Recording Secrets from the Home Studio. Really, really great books. So we worked together for a while. We did sort of mixed feedback with our audience for a while. That was fun. And then Crowd Audio didn't necessarily take off too much, but we were profitable for a while. So it was a fun business to do, but we just kind of wanted to do our own thing. And I kept doing Audio Issues stuff on the side. And then, Audio Issues stuff, until now, basically products, programs, trainings. I wrote Step-by-Step Mixing, launched that in 2017. That's been the top 5 books on Amazon and music recording and sound since its launch. Hits the #1 seat, every other week, every month or so, which is great because that just means that the people are learning and people are like hopefully applying what they're learning and making better music and things like that. And then recently I actually went back to the McGuire Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Arizona as a mentor, as a venture advisor. So now I'm on the other side of I'm on the other side of the glass, except that there's no glass in the classroom. And I'm teaching entrepreneurship and not audio engineering. Not that I couldn't teach both, but it's very fun to be able to, very rewarding to be able to teach, budding entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, how to become entrepreneurs, how to think about business, marketing, customers, and all that jazz.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, man. You've been a busy man, and
So
yeah, it speaks so much to your character, and it's amazing. There's a lot there that I want to ask about, but it's unreal.
Yeah. Also and then like throughout the whole process, I've been in bands. I've been in, 5 bands in Tucson. We've toured around the US as well. So yeah, maybe I'll just write a memoir and people that are interested in more can buy it. But I think that's enough for now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. There's like almost a pattern of like you learning, paying it forward, and then becoming the mentor role. Like that happened when you went back to Madrid there, as well as with the program at the University of Arizona there, where now you're a mentor, which is super interesting. And there's so many questions and things I could ask about that journey, but I don't want to go too far. But a couple of things that stood out to me, and I'll just ask them in a sequence to see what happens. So one thing is, do you think that learning multiple languages, which is impressive, has helped you be able to write? That's one question. Other question is, so somebody, a musician, producer, somebody who's interested in creating a career for themselves, what do you think about going to audio engineering school in today's day and age versus other alternatives like Audio Issues, online learning? And then the other question I had is just, you have such a wealth of knowledge in entrepreneurship, which I feel is like the creator economy in today's day and age. I feel like all of musicians fit inside it, whether they're aware of it or not. It's like that's where it's going, where entrepreneurial skills are definitely in line with that. And then I want to go over to kind of the synthesis of you getting into the writing and building on Audio Issues, but we'll save that. So
yeah. So what was the first question?
First one was
languages. Yeah. I don't know. I think so. I certainly have a lot of like things to draw from, but there's some insecurity about it because English is still my second language, right? So I often I'm like, am I using that phrase right? Is that the phrase? Or am I just translating an Icelandic phrase? But at the same time, the flip side of that is like, well, that just sounds unique then, and that's just my voice. If it sounds weird but is correct in some way, like maybe that's just like how my voice is. So I think the multiple languages helps me, helps the creative juices. But writing, the only thing that makes you a better writer is writing more. So whether you have the languages, and if you feel like it's hard to write a lot, then you're probably not reading enough. Because like when you read, you pick up turns of phrases and like ways of saying things and things like that. So like even if you're reading just for pleasure, you are learning how writing works in a limited capacity for sure. But you are certainly like being introduced to how, how to make something captivating, how phrasing works, how syntax works, and how, like rhythm. I mean, there's rhythm to writing for sure. Because not every sentence can be five letters. You have to like vary it. You have to write like you're playing.
Totally. There's cadence to it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. And in blogging and online content creation, it's a little bit different because like I use paragraph breaks like a maniac. If the sentence or if the paragraph's like more than three lines, I'll have to figure out how to shorten it, because like I just know that it's easier to read, so I'm like writing for the reader. So and online writing is a lot different because you are writing in a different rhythm than if you're writing like a paragraph dense book. Right? So maybe languages help, but like just reading and writing helps you be a better writer. And also, if you read translated works from from other countries in English, it'll, even if the translation is good, it's going to be a little bit weird to read sometimes, but that also shows you that it's some of the phrases that some other countries use may make perfect sense, but they're very hard to translate well because those colloquialisms simply don't exist. What was the other question?
Next one was, that's super interesting. And I find that with French and English as well, there's some, it's funny because like in French, every object has either feminine or masculine quality.
Right.
English, it's a thing.
Yeah,
bro.
Right.
Anyway, it's funny. The other question.
Yeah.
Cool. The other question was, so audio engineering school. I also went to school for audio engineering.
Right. Yeah.
And like I did learn a lot. It was great. I went pretty green. Like I knew how to record, but I didn't know anything about the tech, about acoustics, any of that stuff. And in hindsight, I'm like, okay, maybe I went too early, but like I learned a lot, but I feel like I've learned just as much, if not more, through my own experience and online courses and coaching.
Sure.
That's my own journey, but I'd love to hear your experience, what you think in today's day and age. Like if someone's just up and coming, do you think school's a good idea?
Right. So it really depends on what people are looking to get out of it. So no school is the answer. No one school is going to give you the answer to like your career. And I don't mean audio school. I mean like a lot of my friends are lawyers and they went to law school, and like law school does not prepare you for the real world. It teaches you the law, but it doesn't teach you how to practice law. And audio school is maybe a little more practical. You do have to like actually record sessions and mix music and stuff like that. So, but it won't teach you like how to be a professional career engineer. And it's because that's just not really what they do unless there is a business or industry side to it. Some schools tie those things well together. The SA Institute, that when I went, they've changed their curriculum for sure since then. But the first year was all like technical practice and sort of like the audio engineering knowledge, so that you become like adept as an engineer, right? And you can like walk into a studio and patch, plug anything into the patch bay and all that sort of stuff, right? And the second year was more focused on the business side of things, which is super important. But it's not gonna give you like the answer. It all depends on what you hope to get out of it and what you're gonna put into it after you leave. I was maybe lucky that I just created my own thing during audio school and never needed to rely on a studio being open and looking for people or anything like that, because I was just like kind of had this educational bent to everything that I did. So that was helpful and sort of providential in a way. But I think people and certainly like when I went 2008, Like that's like the Stone Age years of the internet, and maybe Bronze Age.
Yeah, Bronze Age. It wasn't dial-up.
Yeah, exactly. But like, there certainly weren't as many resources available for hardcore easy learning online as there are now. Like, just YouTube alone, there's lots of free stuff that you can learn. You can pick up all the tips and tricks that you want on YouTube. What I think is that sooner or later you're going to run into a wall where the next tip is not going to help you. And more tools in your toolbox is just going to make it harder for you to find the right tool in the toolbox. And at that point, it's always good to have some sort of mentorship or coaching or a support group of some sort to help you get to the next level, for sure. And because it just, that feedback cycle, that continuous improvement cycle is helpful if you have mentorship. And there used to be a time where you would just get this by working your way up in the studio back in the old days, and you'd start out as an intern, then you'd become an assistant engineer, and then you'd become, whatever the hierarchy in that studio was at the time. That's not really the way things are today. Not saying that there's still big studios, but you have to go there. You have to like decide that you want to go live in LA or Nashville or Atlanta or New York or whatever, and be in that harshly competitive environment. Not only because it's competitive, but like even just living in LA is extremely expensive, for instance. And so that's probably why a lot of people take to the internet to learn. And then everybody can put up a home studio if they have enough room, and you don't need a lot, especially if you're making just all in the box electronica, for instance, and only need to record vocals. You need very limited room in order to get good productions going. If you have, theory and understanding of musical instrumentation and arrangements and stuff like that, all of which you can learn online. So I went to audio school, not necessarily for the audio reasons. I already knew how to run the board. I already knew how EQ and compression and all that worked. It was certainly added information that I certainly learned something. I didn't come in and just be like, yeah, I don't need to, like, I know all this. Like, I also had to learn it in a new language because it was all in Spanish, but I went for the experience. So like, I would never take that year back. Being able to go live in Spain for a year, in Madrid, downtown Madrid. It's just an amazing city. All the friends from all over the world, all the Spaniards, all the South American students that came over, and were like, I have really, really good friends that live in Mexico. They're from Venezuela, Argentina, Spain, all over the world that I met in school. And so you have to weigh all the non-tangential or the like all the sort of squishy experience that you get through your schooling. You can't just weigh the curriculum, you have to weigh the journey, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the decision that people should be making. It's not like, oh, audio school is so expensive and I won't learn anything new. Well, then don't go if that's your stupid attitude. Like, you should, like, if you go in with a negative mindset about something, you're gonna get negative results. It's just how it works. Like, if you're curmudgeon-y and crotchety and annoyed at every little thing, guess what? Your life's gonna fucking suck.
Truth bomb.
Yeah. And so like, having a positive mindset about what you want out of what you're doing should be like your priority. So if you're deciding whether to go to audio school for the audio school's sake, you have to weigh more things than just what they're going to teach you. And also, like, are you going to live the life of an audio engineer / music producer, and the somewhat hard, oversaturated industry that we are in? Are you going to be fine with that? Are you gonna be able to do that in the long run? Because I'd hate for you to go to audio school with all these dreams, and then you don't have the mindset of succeeding afterwards because you thought the school was going to give you a golden ticket. And then you just have to go back and you become bitter and jaded, bartender at a music venue. Like, I would hate for that to be your life.
Yeah, that's some sage advice to really think things through. Like, yeah, that would suck. And like, cheers to those people. But I think that's some sage advice is the non-tangible things, like you said, not the curriculum, because you'll meet contacts, you'll develop relationships. If you're in a different city, like you're gonna have an amazing experience as well. And
the networking alone, and the collaboration that happens in school is like, it's hard to collaborate on the internet sometimes because it's like everybody wants to collab, and it's just like, how do you gauge these people without like having to spend a ton of time? But if you're stuck in a classroom with 20 other people, you're going to make friends, and it's going to be easier for you to collaborate or find the people that you want to collaborate with that way. We are very, very online, especially after COVID right now, but like, it is kind of amazing how much easier it is to network and collaborate in person, not through a chat box, because like there's no emotion in chat boxes. I mean, you can try, but like, it's so easy.
Interpretation 101.
Yeah. And like, I had something else to say. I can't remember what it was, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah, one other thing about, like, in the context of like audio school, everyone there is serious. Like, everyone there made the decision to be there. And it's not like somebody just who has like a laptop who's making beats, like just farting out beats that wants to collab, right? Like there's some kind of similar momentum there. So that's incredible sage advice.
I mean, it's also like it speaks to like the amount of investment you made in yourself. Like, I invested a whole year of my life and, some thousands of dollars in audio school. And that shows, well, and because I was serious. And if other people do that, that shows you that they are serious too. And because you also don't want to work with flaky people, not saying that like students can't be flaky, and there's always, some people that just like aren't cut out for audio school, but decide to go anyway. But I think the standard is higher when you've invested a significant amount in yourself. And this is not just for audio school, this is for everything in general. Like, you will, if the course is $3,000, you're gonna finish it. But if it's $30, you might look at it a couple times, right? And then the networking in person, like we talked about earlier, like what you might have to go to the cities and you have to do that. Like, I'm in Tucson. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say stuck in Tucson. I've chosen to be here, but there isn't like a huge music industry in Tucson. So I have to either do everything online or just do my thing online. And that's just how it is. And that's fine. But if you are, in Podunk, wherever, then you will have to, and refuse to move, then you will have to rely a lot more on the online aspects. Not saying that you won't make great friends and great relationships. I certainly have a lot of online friends that I've then met in person, right? But like at NAM and places like that, well, you included. But like it is maybe a little bit more time consuming in that sense, sort of qualifying the collaborator.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually something I'd like to segue to, is like, okay, so in the modern music industry, like with after COVID and everything going online and the online business model kind of being taken by everything and content, but in as well as still the importance of networking in person, going to shows, playing shows, if that's what you're doing, depending on your goals are. But I'd just like to ask you, like, so since you have so much experience, and you could talk to this as well, of when you were blogging and writing online and really sharing value and delivering value, and then that turned into like an online business where you're doing like the email list, the content, the courses, right, and all that stuff. So that model, like that way of doing things, could very well be super beneficial to people who want to create a career in today's day and age with music. But I wanted to ask you, like, do you like, I personally, I'm leaning towards that in today's day and age, like if you want to create a career, whether it's like as a musician, as a band, as a mixing engineer, at some point you're going to have to create something. You're gonna have to share value online.
Yep.
That's my perspective, but I'd love to hear you, like, what do you think today's day and age, like, is that super important? Is it necessary? Can you get away with like moving to a city and just networking and not being online? Like, and like, just with your experience of running Audio Issues for 12 years, like, I feel like you probably have a good bird's eye view of it.
Yeah, I think what we call the creator economy, and which we all fit into as audio engineers, producers, musicians. I think that it's very hard to get away with not doing any of it. You know, if you don't have an online presence, well, first of all, how is anybody going to find you?
Right?
Like, you might be able to pull off just being the guy in the studio in the hometown and everything's word of mouth, or you're just working a big studio and that studio brings you clients. But guess what that studio is doing? They're doing online something, right? They're creating some sort of content. Like, somebody else is doing the marketing for you if you're in that situation. So like, not marketing yourself is not possible. But people tend to run in the other way when we talk about marketing, because it's like a sleaze fest, right? But I have obviously a different opinion about that, because I think marketing is just trying to be helpful, sharing your story, and trying to reach the people that you want to serve in some way. And you have to be very clear on
communication again.
Yeah, communicating what you're doing, who you're doing it for, how they can do it themselves if they want to. A lot of times I see audio engineers especially make this mistake of teaching audio stuff to their audience when they're actually looking for musicians. So like, you're just going to attract more audio engineers interested in learning more about audio. You're not necessarily going to be attracting people that want to work with you, because that's not necessarily the same group, same market segment, if you will. So I think creating content in some form is very much key to success in this day and age. But you don't have to do everything. That's the thing that I think scares people the most, is like, they look at the online ecosystem and the space and they just get immediately overwhelmed, right? And you're supposed to do TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest, and you also have a successful YouTube channel, and if you're not streaming on Twitch, like, who even are you, right? But like, that's just, yeah, no, I couldn't do that at all. Like, so pick the lane that you know you can move the fastest in. So if you're a strong writer, I'm a strong writer. I can say that. I think that I've earned the credibility to be able to say that. I write mostly. I know that writing isn't the best way to convey the information that I'm trying to do. I mean, I have lots of video products and video stuff that I do, and I do a lot of coaching one-on-one where everything's on video, and I show people into sessions and things like that. But if I want to crank out content fast, I will write it. Like, it's the fastest way for me to make something happen and promote my brand, share my story, share my message, things like that. Because that's, you know, I'm currently playing like a stupid old Star Wars role-playing game where you have to, like, you know, where you have to, every few levels, you get to select a feat and the power and all that. So you have to make decisions, right? So like, do I want to wield 2 lightsabers, or do I want to get an attack bonus by wielding 1 lightsaber, or do I want to focus on a blaster pistol or a blaster rifle? Like, these are decisions in order for you to be successful in the game. So business and life is just a game in a way, and you have to find what works the best for you. So if that is taking really cool photographs and posting them on Instagram, and you're good at that, do that. like grow your audience there. I think your target audience is probably everywhere. Like let's say you are like, well, let's just say like I'm targeting musicians that want to do it themselves, right? That's my core group in the audio issues ecosystem. And so they're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're everywhere. But if I want to be everywhere, I will do none of it well. So that's why I started writing. I started blogging. I started making really in-depth articles to be found on Google. And then my main social media channel back in the day, and it's kind of still is to a certain extent, was Facebook. And then once I like had gotten to a certain point, certain follower count, certain engagement, and stuff like that, I could focus on something else. If you do everything at once, you'll do nothing well. But if you do one thing at a time, not saying that you pick one thing and stick with it forever. I mean, that's you might get sort of stagnation at some point there. But if you pick one thing, do it really well to a certain level, and then you pick another thing, you strategize around making that the best thing for you, and then you jump from one thing to the other. At the end of that very long career journey, you will have done things really well everywhere, instead of trying to do things poorly everywhere at the same time, right? And so I think that picking your lane that you move the fastest in, which is the type of content that you want to make, picking the channel that portrays that content the best, imagery on Instagram, video on YouTube. Facebook takes everything, but it just depends on whether you want to be on Facebook or not. They're sort of, Facebook is like good at nothing, but like everybody's there. so you can make any sort of content on Facebook, and it's fine, but it's just a matter of like whether you want to do that. And then short video, still Instagram, but also TikTok, of course.
Shorts, yep.
Shorts and things like that. That's and that's just gonna grow. I've been thinking about how to. I actually love. I don't have TikTok, but I like watch reels on Facebook and Instagram, which is basically like just thing. Yeah, it's just they're just uploaded to another channel, but it's the same videos. And like I love that short form content, and there's really a lot of fun stuff.
There's some funny stuff.
Yeah,
sure.
There's so like that's something that I've been thinking about. Like if I'm gonna get into video content, maybe I'll just get into some like really like stupid, funny short form, like not necessarily education, more like poking fun of the audio, poking fun of the industry, poking fun of like the crotchety old engineer that thinks everything they do is right, and nobody else, like nobody's doing it the way they did it in the old days and stuff like that, which it just like makes me want to throw up. But yeah, so content is still key, but you have to have a strategy around what it is, like, and what is that content supposed to do for you? Is it supposed to, are you trying to get likes? That, well, likes aren't worth much, but likes are maybe a byproduct, or like you want to think about, if you're making it a career, you do need money. Like you can't have a career without money, because at that point it's a hobby. Nothing against having it as a hobby, but if you want to make money with it, you have to have a business strategy around what it is you're selling, how are you reaching the people that are your ideal clients, how are you going to do that with the content that you're creating? Are you creating the correct content for the audience that you want to serve, that helps them solve a problem that they have, that if they know that you solve that problem so well for them, you'll be able to do even better for them in the future. They might actually come to you. How are you leading people from the sort of noise of social media onto your platform where they engage with you? Like, these are all questions that people have to answer in order to have a strategy.
Totally. Yeah. Like, it's so important to ask those questions ahead of time, because there's a lot, especially in the youth as well, like wanting, and there's nothing wrong with vanity and fame and influence, but sure, that in itself, without a business model, is, so what? You have 100,000 subscribers, like you get some AdSense, and it's like, I think asking those questions of who am I serving? What am I offering? And like really getting nitty gritty. And one thing you touched on that I think is so important, that you actually, I don't know if it was intentional, but you helped me with when we were working together one-on-one
Yeah.
is getting like just authentic with what it is you want to do. So a good example with you is like your latest book, You Get What You Give. Like I feel like it's obviously educational, but it's also, it feels an expression of you. It's an art form. You wrote a book that you're expressing your view set. And it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like that model, if whether it's in a business sense or with music, like
Yeah.
no matter how you're marketing what you're doing, it should be an extension of who you are as a person and what you want to share. And like it changes the description of marketing, right? It's like marketing doesn't have to be, do you want to buy this used car? It can be like, yo, check out this awesome thing I created that I really like. If you want to
Yeah.
see more of this, check this out, right?
Yeah.
It really gets demonized, I feel. So that's something I feel is so important, is like almost the personality, making it your own.
Yeah.
And as you said, like as it's getting more and more saturated in every industry online, I feel like more and more people are connecting with personalities, which kind of speaks to why TikTok and like comedy, like having fun will generate more traffic necessarily than like the right content, the right information.
But and I think that that's what is holding people back a lot that want to succeed, I guess, is it's scary to be yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, what if they don't like me? You know, what if, so like, yeah, those are very real fears. And like, also like the stupid imposter syndrome is like, what if this isn't good enough? What if I'm wrong? Or like, what, you know, so many what ifs I can ask, but like,
Not good enough.
well, you can either try and fail, or you can just decide not to succeed from the start. You know, like you so like, all right, like if you have like terrible vices and real deep dark secrets, maybe don't share them, and maybe take care of yourself first, right? Like but if you're just like being quirky and like talking about like what you like outside of the topics that you like are quote unquote like creating content around, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like I talk about comic books all the time, talk about beer, like I'm a big micro craft beer lover, talk about, you know, stupid video games and Star Wars and all. Like I'm a huge nerd. So like that just, I can't not talk about that stuff because it's more entertaining. It's also easier for me to make content if I'm like, I'm just going to talk about my mundane stupid life, and hopefully my skills at writing will make it funny enough for people to find it entertaining, right? Because I'm just sharing my story of what I'm doing. I'm not always giving away all the secrets or whatever. Not that there are tons of secrets, but how I compile what I teach is like very methodical and like step-by-step wise. So what you learn from me are the frameworks and the step-by-step systems and things like that, things that you don't necessarily find on YouTube. But the way I share that or market that is just talk about, I use comedy and I talk about the stories that that of my life and things of that nature. And sometimes it hits the mark and sometimes it doesn't, but the more times you get up and try again, the closer you are to success, I think. It's cliche is like what is it like, the more balls you hit at the goal or something like that, you're more likely to hit, and whatever, you can't remember what the thing
Something
is
like that.
yeah. But like but it is scary to be yourself, but you have to do it anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like that's a fear that I continue to face. It's not like I've overcome that fear, but it was crippling at first.
Hang on. Or another comedy trick, or you are a persona. There's nothing wrong. I kind of am like, well, I'm certainly a cartoon character. Like that's my brand.
Yeah.
But like I'm when you're taught stand up and when you're taught sort of improv and all that, you are taught to like be a performer. You're a performer. You are a character. You're not necessarily a caricature of yourself, but you are an elevated character, right? You are like you are maybe like you use it, especially in comedy, and like you use exaggeration and like you say things that aren't true for the sake of the joke, right? So like that I think is also a possibility of like, well, if you know, if you don't like who you are, like I personally like who I am, which is, I think is pretty healthy. But if you don't like who you are, that's maybe something to figure out. And but if you don't like who you are, who would you want to be, and can you be that person online? Because sooner or later you will become that person. And if you like, you know, I've reinvented myself 3 times because I've lived in 3 different countries and done, you know, had 3 different careers. I'm always the same person, of course, but like I've been able to, you know, evaluate, reflect, and double down on what works, and to dismiss and discard things that, you know, maybe vices, maybe bad behaviors, bad habits, and then just, you know, double down on what works and move on from there. And I think that that's important for anybody that wants to have a successful life, not necessarily like $1 billion in the bank, or just like a successful life, is to reflect often and be honest with yourself about what you want to achieve and what is enough. What's the definition of success is another way of saying that. And then and moving forward from there, but repeating the process. That's why I like support groups, like not support groups like AA or whatever. Like those are obviously have their benefits and things like that. But I'm talking about like career support groups like masterminds, or friends that come together to talk about their wins and failures and things like that. Because your friends don't care, you know. Like they'll support you. They'll root for you, right? But like, are you gonna come to tell your friend who like doesn't like their job that you just like made a $10,000 last month because you had a good month? Like, no. But if you have a good business partner support group, a mastermind or something like that, like the design of the group is to cherish those things, is to be okay with success, you know, because, you know, that's because you should celebrate your wins for sure. Yeah, I have no idea where this started, so
it's all good. That was unreal. There's like, yeah, like understanding what success means to you is so important, like that, like, because it's so easy to get lost in ideas that might not be what you want, right? It's so, like, right, you learned it somewhere else, someone else told you what success was, your parents, your upbringing, your culture. Right, and you have to constantly reflect, because as today the information highways are so fast that it can be so easy to lose sight of that. So that's incredible.
And then if you have like, if you're on like Facebook and you're scrolling, you know, like, I don't know how many ads I see of like successful coaches selling their systems and all that, and they work. Like I'm sure their programs are great, but you just get kind of exhausted with like the success. How would I say this? Like it's like this. It's replaced the rat race, kind of like it's the success race, right? Like you have to have a 2 Comma Club award from ClickFunnels to even start being successful, right? Which is complete bullshit. And also, do you know those things cost money?
Like, you have to pay for that?
Yeah, they don't send them to you when you hit $1 million in ClickFunnels.
That's lame. That's so lame. There's a funnel for it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's totally a funnel for it. But like, but like that's the thing, is like, you also, especially in this country, in America, like it is certainly different in Spain, and it's different in Iceland. Iceland's closer to westernized American success culture than maybe Spain is, but they certainly aren't anywhere close to the sort of this incessant hunger for more, right? So that's something I've been dealing with a lot ever since my daughter was born. Was like, well, like, what am I doing this for? And I'm only doing it for her. So like, I mean, I'm also doing it for my students, and I'm trying to like help them at the highest level and all that sort of stuff. But like, at the end of the day, what do the numbers in the bank account mean? They mean a month in Iceland over the summer. They mean I don't have to be anywhere when I I don't have to be anywhere at a certain time because I can walk her to school and pick her up from school. She can have my attention. I don't have a boss breathing down my neck that says that something needs to be done by the end of day, or I get fired, and that, compromises my values for being there for my daughter and being a good husband and all those things. That's what the numbers in the bank account mean. They mean freedom to be that person. Like, yeah. So I think that's something that people need to think about, that like, yeah, you might want $100,000 a month business, but at what cost? So like you need, and I'm a little older. I'm not old by any stretch, I think, hope. But like people in their early 20s, like they're hungrier, and they should be hungrier. And it's the time to be hungry. And work a little bit more because you have less responsibilities. And I think that that's a perfect time to really double down on the skills that you need and the life, and decide the life that you want. Anyway.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you like create it, right, make it happen. And like,
Yeah.
I feel that's something that's incredibly important to just consider, is like, even me talking to artists and producers and musicians, and if I ask, hey, what's the biggest problem, like what's the biggest thing you're struggling with? Money. And it's like, money isn't anything. Like, money is just a vehicle.
Yeah. How much do you want? How much do you need? Like what? Like, let's start
for what? But it's like, it's always for something else. Like, money in and of itself is useless. You use it to get something, right? Like the trip to Iceland, right?
Yeah.
That's something that okay, now money has a purpose. So it's very, you want to be clear about what is actual value to you, right? Yeah. Because that in itself
if it's just more, then like, all right, well, like that more is just a hamster wheel, right? That's just leads you to just wanting more. But like, do you have a number that would help, like make it helpful? Like, do you? And so let's say, like, when people say money, I like to dig down further. Okay, so how much do you want? If I had to write you a check right now, you'd be happy. What would it be? Right? How much do you need per year? Right? Okay. Let's just take, the aspiring person that has very little money. Let's try to get them to at least the median income, which is around $50,000, which is healthy in maybe like not the high cost of living areas, right? So $50,000 a year. What's that, like $6,000 a month, something like
that? Not sure. Math.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever. Let's say you need $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month, that's $60,000. Okay. Yeah. So you need $5,000 a month to live. What does that mean? Okay. You need, if you want to do it on your own and you want to be your own person, you need, how many clients do you need? Like your skill set, how valuable is your skill set, right? Can you charge $1,000 for your skill set? Okay. If you can charge $1,000 for your skill set, then you need 5 clients every month in order to get $5,000, right? $1,000 for your skill set is very little. I hope people have better, or I hope people either value themselves more or are willing to acquire the necessary skills to be valuable at a higher level. So let's say, if your skill set, you can charge $2,500 per client, which can be, it can be all sorts of things. Maybe it's not like producing one song, but maybe it's like mixing a whole album. Maybe it's making the graphics for a marketing campaign for a label, for instance, or and a whole host of things. It doesn't have to be music related. It can be copywriting, it can be marketing, it could be audio editing, things of that nature. So like, all right, if your skill set's worth $2,500, what do you need? 2 clients per month? Okay. So 2 clients per month. What are you going to do every day in order to get 2 clients per month? Right? That's that. And who is the client? Where are they? What do they need help with? And how can you get in front of them? right? And how, without being pushy, just being helpful, but just go out and help people. Try to find, and if you're starting from scratch, this is basically just what you get, what you give talks about. But like, it's basically, all right, well, if you are starting completely from scratch, well, you're going to need a portfolio of some sort. So maybe you can eat 2 clients for free, like eat the cost of 2 clients for free. Don't eat them.
This is my skill.
That's cannibalism and very illegal. But like, but so then just make a portfolio and then work from there. But don't do it the other way of like starting free and then just charging measly after that. Start for free, find the high level clients that will allow you to work with them for free, and then like demand at least market rate prices. Because cutting your rates and doing things for free and doing things poorly, because if you still need $5,000 a month and you're charging $100 a mix or $100 of anything, how many clients do you need? You always need so many clients in order to just break even, that it's just going to burn you out, and you're going to want to be the bitter bartender.
Yeah, you'd rather do that at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it simplifies it, right? When you get the metrics down and you break it down, and then it just makes it simple, and charging what you're worth, like, because it's a race to the bottom otherwise, right? Yeah. So yeah, well, this has been incredible, Bjorgvin. Like, we've went all over the place. I feel like we could keep going forever.
Sure.
But the way I like to wind these down is I totally rip this off from Tim Ferriss, but some rapid fire questions if you're down, and then go for it. Wrap it up. Cool. So what would you say is the artist you have shared most with other people?
Musical artist?
Sure. Let's go with music.
Oh, man. I can't answer that question.
Totally fair.
I don't know. Man.
It's hard. It's kind of an asshole question.
Well, I'll answer it this way. The artists that I shared a lot out of my own because of my own ego was like, every time I went to Bonnaroo and recorded a bunch of bands and came back, I would always share the bands that I recorded because I like them so much. It just to share their music and to be able to say like I've met them,
Amazing.
So maybe a little dark side ego boost there, but whatever.
What are 1 to 3 books? Let's go with 3 books that have greatly influenced your life.
Okay. 4-Hour Workweek. Shit.
It's so hard.
Let me think. It can't be rapid fire if I have to think about it. Non-obvious. I'm just like looking at my bookshelf right now. Non-obvious is a really good book. Teaches you how to think pretty well.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, there's so many. Like Anything by Seth Godin is great.
Purple Cow, that's a good one.
Yeah. Like it depends. Obviously, it depends on like what you need. Like the 4-Hour Workweek for just like the career-driven creative is like solid. But like other than that, like the business parables are all very good. Like The Go Giver, Built to Sell. I mean, influenced my life. Like Step by Step Mixing has influenced my life the most. But I wrote it, so like I can't. It's kind of a cop out answer. But like
I love it.
As far as like changing my life, yeah.
It's definitely cool. Okay, let's put those 3. That's awesome. How has failure or apparent failure led to success? Do you have a favorite failure?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I tell this story all the time. So my first failure was my first audio issues product called Audio Notes. Okay. It was a notebook that had a bunch of track sheets in it. And if you're not familiar with what track sheets are, they are the sheets that people would use back in the old analog days to keep track of like what was on the channels and what was on, as they were recording. So like kick, snare, bass here on this channel, blah, 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 blah. And so I put that into a big notebook, and I had like a little audio tip at the bottom of every page, and it sold terribly. I think I've sold like 10 copies in 10 years.
What a year. Sick.
Yeah, right. But it was a failure, but it also worked as a stepping stone towards success, because it helped me understand how to outsource design work and how to hire other people to help do things that I couldn't do, how to price things, how to find efficient ways of selling things. Like I used a print on demand service. I didn't buy an inventory of products, which I would have regretted very much. I'm glad I did a print on demand service. I learned to like come up with different product ideas. I learned how to write copy, or started to write copy. So definitely like gave me a lot of fundamentals. That failure gave me a lot of fundamentals to work with.
Totally. Yeah. Great learning tool.
Yeah.
What is best sub $100 purchase you've recently made?
I think it's probably just like another pair of Allbirds.
Nice.
I exclusively wear Allbirds shoes almost, unless I have to like go somewhere fancy, and then I have like a bunch of other like nicer shoes. But I basically just they're so comfortable, they're so great. And so when the EQ came out and I like was like celebrated like a successful launch, I just bought myself a pair of 2 pairs of Allbirds, but they're $95 each. So they are like, so one pair is sub $100 for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got to be comfy footwear. What's one of the most worthwhile investments you've made? We touched on some of these already, but it can be money, time, energy, anything.
All of the people that help me are very valuable, you included. And the investment in saving me time is very, very high for me. The return to me is very high, because it's just like I cannot possibly do everything myself. So like if I know that somebody else is gonna be able to do it better than me, I'll probably try to get that done. And but in the last couple of years, maybe, well, my assistant is like crucial. She's great.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And but my bookkeeper was probably one of the best investments. I've had an accountant forever, but it wasn't until, but like I have like thousands of transactions in Audio Issues every month. So the books are crazy.
Important.
Yeah. They're just like overwhelming. And I used to try to do it myself. He categorized everything, do all this stuff myself. But like bookkeeping, it sucks. Like it's not fun. I mean, I'm sure bookkeepers like it, I hope, but like it is not for me. And I cannot tell you how much better having a bookkeeper is, because not only do they handle all of the categorization of everything, and then like my bookkeeper also works with my accountant, so like my taxes are just taken care of very easily and all that, but she also gives me a P&L. And if you don't know what a P&L is, like a profit and loss statement, which basically tells me how well I'm doing each month. And what that helps you do is strategize. So like if you see exactly like, oh, I made this much money this month, or I made last month, I made more this month, da, 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 da. What it helps me see is like, oh, I don't have to worry about like making a sale every day. I don't have to refresh my dashboard every 5 seconds hoping that somebody's going to buy one of my courses or something like that, because I can afford the long view of like, oh, I have reserves, I have this amount of money, I'm able to strategize and do things into the future. I don't have to be like, oh, I have to run a sale, or I have to do this and that. I have to make a quick buck. It helps me serve at a higher level, and it helps me come up with better ideas for the business.
Totally. It keeps you sane. It's like a super meaningful metric without everything else. It just keeps it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's an unusual habit or absurd thing you love?
Unusual habit. I play Oculus all the time. That's a weird habit, putting stuff on your face and
Sick.
just
Yeah.
disappearing into the VR world.
What do you play?
Uh,
What's your virtual thing?
I've played a lot of games on Oculus. Currently, I only really play Population One, which is a multiplayer, like a battle royale sort of Hunger Games game.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's definitely one of my sort of vices, if you will. Like I probably play an unhealthy amount of
Have
that.
you played Vader?
Yeah.
Okay.
I played episode one, but I have yet to buy the next two. But I did just watch the new Obi-Wan
Series.
yeah, or like the latest episode yesterday, and it really makes me want to like buy the rest of the Vader series because it's so story driven. So yeah, that's sort of like a silly thing that I do, that I like love doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've been meaning to get me one of those. I've only played my friends, but it's so
Oh,
fun. It's
yeah,
addicting.
yeah.
If you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do usually?
I meditate. Like one of my healthy habits are like meditation and like healthy smoothies in the morning and things like that. If I often find that if I don't exercise, in like I'll get grumpier and everything will be harder, and I will like start reacting poorly to things if I haven't exercised in a while. The meditation is similar, like but I kind of get a lot of meditation, like the aspect of meditation, the sort of like focus. I get a lot of that out of exercise too. But if I feel very like frazzled, I do try to just like kind of take things off, like just leave them and then take a walk, go for a run. I'll box inside the Oculus. Like I exercise in the Oculus too, which
Sick.
totally works, by the way. Like definitely like keeps you in shape. Um, so yeah, those sorts of things, like just sort of disconnecting sometimes is pretty good. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I find that as well. Like getting a good some exercise in or good workout in, it's like it almost increases your threshold for any stress. So that's something that's like stressful. A situation happens, you're like, I'll chill. But if you haven't done that in a while, then you're like, oh, you react to this thing. It's funny.
Yeah.
So what's some bad advice you hear in your area of expertise?
Use your ears. It's not bad advice, but when people use it as an answer to a complicated question, is that I think it's pretentious and annoying. Uh it's like saying, oh yeah, just like buy low, sell high if you're like a stock trader. It's like, yeah, no, I'd love to do that. I'd love to use my ears. I currently am using my ears. Also have no idea how any of these processors work. Could you help me with that? Oh, just use your ears.
Use yours, bro.
I'm still using my ears. Like it doesn't work as an answer to a question. Like it's the prerequisite of working in music. Like you shouldn't be saying this.
That's funny. uh, what, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
You're worth more than you think you are.
That's good. I like that a lot. That hits home. This one is such an asshole question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Top 3 desert island albums.
Oh, The Wall. I don't. Downward Spiral, maybe.
That's a great one.
Oh, and El Cielo by Dredge.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've heard that one. That one I might have to check out.
Yeah, I think Catch Without Arms is their like breakout one, but I was like a fan in Iceland, which is odd from a band from Los Gatos, California, I think they're from. But that album is a work of art. Like it truly is.
Amazing.
And they're great. So like those are probably and also all of those albums are like very much works of art in a broader sense than just the music. But I could name more. It's just it would take all day.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. Every time I do these rapid fire questions, they're never rapid fire. So I'm going to change the name to them to just normal fire questions. So here's the last one, and it's a super hippy dippy question, but I'm going to ask it. I love it. So if you could send a text message to everybody on Earth in their language and they could understand it, what would it be?
Oh, this is a good question. Hang on. Knock knock.
I love that.
No,
that means they're going to reply. How many replies would you get?
It really depends on like what, like, so the goal for me would be like, how can I make the world happier? Or like, how can I make them laugh a little bit more? Like
bring some joy.
Yeah, bring some joy. So like, what can you do? Because you don't want to also be like smile more or like think happy, like commanding, right?
Yeah.
Smile. Yeah. Right. Because you're inevitably going to get, you're going to send it to somebody who's in such a deep
crazy situation.
Yeah, crazy situation, and is just like not able to. But like I would try to like, I don't know, I would try to make people smile or laugh. Laughing is a pretty helpful mechanism for feeling a little bit better.
Totally. Cool. All right. Well, that's all the questions. And yeah, with that said, like, where can people go to learn more about what you're up to or anything of that nature? Where would you like them to go?
Yeah, so just audioissues.com, audio-issues.com too. It's all the same. That's probably the best place. Sign up for the email list if you're into audio production tips and things surrounding that, the skills you need to succeed with your music, whether you're a producer, engineer, or artist. And that's probably the easiest place to say hi. Check out the books. Step-by-step mixing is at stepbystepmixing.com. If you don't need mixing help because you're all good at it already, You Get What You Give is one of my latest book, which is a business parable. It's a fictionalized or a novelized business book. Lots of me in it. We didn't necessarily touch upon that, but it's closer to a novella than how to build a business book. But I think it straddles both of those spheres. How do you straddle a sphere? Anyway,
I like that. That's some poetic language. Just imagining straddling planets.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's at yougetwhatyougivebook.com, or you can find it all on Amazon too. Yeah, other than that, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn if you want to connect professionally. I'm very inactive there, but I am there. But yeah, Audio Issues is probably the best bet.
Great. Awesome. We'll put all of those links in the show notes for this episode. And yeah, with that said, you've been incredible, Bjorgvin. Thank you so much
Thanks for
taking
having
the time to
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah, it was
Great.
fun.
Awesome. And with that said, we'll see you guys in the next episode.